I'm going to show a really basic custom curtain wall panel. You can get really deep into these, but I'm going to just stick with a simple one for now. So we're going to come down to families and say new, and you want to navigate on yours until you find curtain panel pattern based. And so it'll just bring up this grid, and this is essentially going to create a custom curtain panel. It uses sweep within this, and this particular one is just a standard square. There are other shapes out there if you're trying to do hexagon, octagon, rhomboid, all that stuff. But let's break it down a little bit. We've got 4 control points. Each of the points has a different reference plane you can draw on. And then as they're all connected, you can use that as a sweep for whatever profile you want. So I'm going to start with a simple mullion. I'm going to say set work plane. I'm going to pick any of the verticals. As long as it's not this horizontal, because that would mean my drawing goes up and down. I want to follow these paths. So I can pick this vertical. I can pick this vertical. Both of them will work. So I'm going to go with this one. And I'm going to come from this point. I'm going to go down. I mean, a standard mullion is 2 by 6, right? So I'm going to make this 4. I'll go ahead and keep it at 2. Come up. And if you're ever not 100% sure if you're in the right direction, your degrees will say 90. Now this is 90 in the wrong direction, but if it says anything other than 90, you're not going to be coplanar. Right, so I have a small rectangle here. I'm going to pick on this. Then I'm going to hold Control and pick these. And now I can just say create form, solid form. And now you can see I have a 2 by 4 mullion. Now's a chance if you want to do the material. And right now it's just picking lines, but if I come in, do this, say filter, I get the reference plane out. Now I can come in and say I want to do aluminum. Unfortunately, aluminum doesn't exist in the family, so you'd have to first make a new material, call it what you want, and then go to the asset browser, search for aluminum. And you can see there's all sorts of stuff here. So this is your project. You make it whichever version of this you like. Somebody last year actually went with this red glossy one. I'm going to go with, I'll go with the satin. So just double click on it. Now this satin aluminum might not be in your main project, so you'll have to create a new one in there as well. All right, I'll click apply. Okay. Now at its most basic level, I could do another one in between. I could just pick them all. Sorry. I could click them all, and I could say create solid form again. And now you can see down here I have my choice. This one is just a flat item. That doesn't always pop up, so you might have to change what it is. But I could come in and again I could say this is going to be glass. Doesn't, oh, there is a glass here. So I could say glass, okay. But this isn't very different from our existing one, right? So I'm going to undo. I'm going to leave these. I'm going to come to a top view. I'm going to create just a simple pyramid shape. So to start, I'm going to click on reference line. I'm going to snap from this midpoint out to this midpoint. And I'm going to switch to this point element. And it doesn't like to attach from the top view, so I'm going to change my camera a bit. I'm going to go back to point, and now it'll snap to that midpoint. So I did that just to have a centered pyramid. If you want something funky, it's off-centered, you can just place it randomly, or you can make a completely different shape. Like I said, this is a really basic one I wanted to show. So now I want to raise it up though, because right now it's at the same height as the rest of this. So I'm going to say move, and I'm going to decide how high up do I want this. Let's see what 9 inches looks like. Alright, now this has served its purpose. I'm not going to use it for any mullions. Excuse me. So I can just delete it. And now I want to make some more reference lines between here. So I'm going to pick this, and I'm going to turn off chain because I want to do one at a time. Now I'm going to switch, because if I use model line, I could, but then I have to manually come back in each time and say his reference line. If I just say reference from the start, and I pick that, and I'm going to do spline through points, actually. I'm going to pick here to here. Now I got to click it again, because it wants to keep going, because it's spline. See, it just keeps bending. So I'm just going to click spline again. Do not click the center first, or you'll get a random error message. It won't affect what you're trying to do. It's just kind of annoying. So from here to here. So now, in theory, if I click on these, because I used reference, you'll see the 2 planes come up at either side. If this was just a model line, those wouldn't show up. So if I'm trying to create a mullion in between here to make this pyramid, which is going to be a very shallow pyramid at this point, I could, in theory, I could still grab this, move it up, and because of the way I made this, and I did a spline through points, these are all connected to this now. So if you don't like the way it looked originally, you can just adjust it. I'm going to come back to something a little more subtle. And now to draw on here, these reference planes are great for the outer edge, but they're not going to help me follow this diagonal. So I need to again put a point element. I'm going to just snap to the midpoint. And I'm going to go straight across this way and do the same this way. I can't really get all 4 from one shape. Maybe I could, but I haven't figured it out yet. So now I'm just going to say set plane. I'm going to pick this one to start. And I'm going to go to circle. And I'm going to do something subtle. So remember, this is a radius. So if I do a 1/4 inch, this is actually a 1/2 inch wide, which is still, you know, not huge. So Now I'll pick the circle, I'll hold Control, get that reference line, hold Control, and now when I click Create Form, it's going to start here, come up to the peak, and then it's going to go back down to the opposite side. You can see not very subtle compared to the other one. So if you decide you want something bigger, then I would click Undo at this point, and whoa, click on this and give yourself a bigger diameter. Let's say you want this to be 1 inch, so you would just say 0.5 inches. So now that's a 1/2 inch on either side of the line. I'm going to hold Control, create a solid form. Alright, I'm going to do the same thing over here. I'm going to say Set Work Plane, pick this point. I'm going to have to change my camera a bit. Again, make it solid. So, almost there. Now we want glass in here. So I would have to make sure I want to make sure I see this dashed out line and the planes. I'm going to hold Control and get 3 of these. Now if I create a solid form, I'll have 2 options here. One has some thickness to it, and the other is basically a panel of glass. So you can see that's the first one. Do it over and over. Save it as a family. So I'll finish this one up. I'm going to click here, hold Control. And sadly, that option is not showing up this time around. That's unfortunate. So I'm just going to drag it until it snaps. And that should theoretically be the same thickness. Again, click here. 1, 2, 3. Create solid form. I have yet to solve the mystery of why sometimes I get the option and sometimes I don't. I don't make these often enough to run into it on a regular basis. But I do like, yeah, the first one I made was a little cleaner. Alright. Click here, Control, Control, create solid form. So I think this was the first one, and that's a 1/2. No, this is the one where it started off as normal. And I think all these others are going to be randomly assigned a thickness. Oh, that one's also at 0 and 0. So let's try if I could get this one again. And just say 0. That way they're all the same. And now I can kind of highlight it all, use my filter. Unfortunately, curtain panels is going to be multiple categories, so I'll have to come in one at a time. That's fine. So I can come in, I can find this. It's probably easier from this edge. And now I can say material, glass, and so now, before I do any kind of deciding if I'm going to load it into a project, I could save it and give it a custom name that will make it easier to find. So I'm just going to do File, Save as a Family, pick a location you're going to remember, and be able to find it easily. I'm just going to call this Pyramid Curtain Panel. So that's it in its most basic form. If you wanted to do different shapes, you just add different points, change where your reference lines are for your mullions, and then make panels in there. So I encourage you to get as creative as you want. Don't get stuck into thinking you can only need to work with squares. And because you can divide any kind of mass surface by the same shapes you can make these families out of. And then you just apply it. And most of the time it works. It gets a little funky around the edges sometimes, which is why it's sometimes safer to stick with something like this, but there are workarounds for all of that as well. So I didn't actually show you how to change shapes if you wanted to. Over here in the project browser you can see the different shapes I'm talking about. If you want to actually change one, you can click on here, and now on your properties it shows rectangle. Gives you the spacing. And now I could come down and I could say I want to do a rhomboid, I want to do triangular, I want to do a zigzag, hexagon, octagon, arrows. You could do like a step pattern. So if you're trying to make something kind of look like a brick wall. So all these are options. Don't limit yourself in your design choices. If you're trying to make, a greenhouse and you want to go with a bee theme, you could do a hexagonal pattern. You could make your mullions just like we did with the square, put your glass in, and then apply that. Alright, that's it. And if you really wanted to, once you've seen it with physical properties, you could still come in here, grab this point, and say, I want this to be way more pronounced, and everything you created, because it was based on these reference lines, as the reference lines moves, so do your glass panels, so do your mullions. You wouldn't be able to do it necessarily in a project, but let's say you loaded this family into a project, you didn't like how it looked, you just come back into the editor here, make your changes, reload it into your project, and see how you like it.